Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I'm Marta Ferguson. This is Marta's Sci-Fi Seminar. So those of you that have been following along, those of you that have been doing the homework, you are at about 15,000 words into your first novel draft. Congratulations! That's further than most of us ever get on a first attempt, especially. I will remind you, it took me 6 or 7 tries to actually finish a novel. All of my others were a few thousand words down the road and phew, and I don't know that that many of them made it to 15,000 words. So you are making things go, and you are about a quarter of the way if we're aiming for 60 to 70,000 words. So my congratulations. You have already accomplished a lot. Stay with it. Keep up that momentum. What I'm going to talk to you about today, after finishing Felicia Rose Chavez's The Anti-Racist Writing Workshop, I've given some thought to one of the things that we writers love, and that is jargon. And Chavez talks about breaking jargon down being one of the important keys in leveling the playing field in an anti-racist writing workshop context. So I'm going to spend the next couple of videos breaking down some writer jargon things. We've already talked some about character creation, particularly the need to be sensitive when you're creating characters who differ from yourself in significant ways, and particularly in the context of science fiction and fantasy, when you're creating characters who are intentionally other, how you create those characters. But I thought it would be useful to take even one more step back. And I know I've recommended Walter Mosley's This Year You Write Your Novel and Elements of Fiction. But I thought it would be good maybe to just talk about what we mean when we say elements of fiction and to start delving into some of those elements of fiction. As you know, I also run Marta's Magical Mystery class, and I record on alternate weeks. So last week, when I got ready to record this section on elements of fiction for the mystery class, I laughed really hard because I thought, oh, everybody knows the elements of fiction. And Chavez's point was proved immediately in that clearly not only does not everybody know the elements of fiction, but not even the folks who you would think might know the elements of fiction. Not even everybody agrees on what the elements of fiction are. I was raised in my formative writer years to believe there were 5 elements of fiction: character, plot, setting, point of view, and theme. And you don't have to try to remember or record those now. I'll be talking about them more. But when I went out to do a little research, you know what? There's lots of other things that are being discussed as key elements of fiction: voice, tone, conflict and resolution, climax, denouement, structure, style. Each of those things are all parts of craft. None of them are quite interchangeable. So yeah, I was really glad I decided, no, it might be good to step back and just not make assumptions about what you all know or don't know about the elements of fiction. And again, I'm going to highly recommend Mosley's book, which takes its own tack on discussing these issues. That's a really wonderful, it feels like you're getting to have a conversation with Mosley himself, this incredibly thoughtful and experienced reader and writer who's been doing this for decades and decades. So still highly recommending the Mosley. But this is my own little contribution to what are the elements of fiction? Why are they important? How are they part of your drafting process? So the first one is character, and I've already talked a good bit about character development, the critical thing I think to remember about character is that characters aren't people. Okay? That's a hard thing to maybe wrap your head around if you're a relatively new writer, but I think it's an important thing to wrap your head around. People are really complicated. There's no way you could entirely capture even one person as a whole complex human being on paper, much less a whole bunch of them, enough to make a story go. So characters are approximations of people. Sometimes they are drawn from life, they're drawn from people you know. Sometimes they're what we call amalgamations, meaning kind of mixtures or put-togethers of several different people you know. Sometimes they are imagined. But characters aren't people, and trying to make a character seem very lifelike can often defeat that purpose, because then you bog down in trying to describe a character instead of just letting your character live a life on the page. I am a writer who believes that all good fiction comes from character. I know not everybody believes that. I do love Mosley's take on the worth of a novel does not depend on the literary religion of its writer. And when I say I'm somebody who's devoted to character-driven fiction, yeah, that is my literary religion. But I really believe that, especially when you're starting out as a novelist, character is something most of us can kind of get a sense of because we live our lives with other people. We live our lives with ourselves. So even though characters are not people, you're going to do your best to approximate people on the page. And you're going to fill your book with different approximate people, different characters. So it is a key element in fiction. Now, the second thing I'm going to talk about is plot. Now, the people who do not believe character is central in fiction often believe plot is central in fiction. Not all of them. But there are a lot of people who believe character has to serve plot. And certainly there are stories where the plot feels more urgent and critical than the characters who are swept up in it. But more often than not, a story comes from the intersection of plot and character. Plot, very simply, are the things that happen in the story. So you can say the plot happens to the characters. You can say the characters create the plot. I, again, tend to think that the plot and the characters are two separate elements. You bring them together. When I'm writing, I bring them together and I think, okay, I have this cast of characters. I have this sequence of events that I want to happen. So I'm going to have this sequence of events happen to these characters and we'll see what happens. And again, this would be we've talked about the different approaches to novel writing. I suspect that approach does fit solidly in the Planzer territory, where I'm neither plotting, I'm not a classic plotter in that I haven't plotted out every beat of every scene for the book. Neither am I a pantser, where I'm kind of just following my characters around with a notebook and like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? What's going to happen next? That's not me either. But that is a great pre-writing exercise. You can interview your characters. You can pretend that you are following them around for a day. It is a great way to get into a character's world, to do some of those things as pre-writes. And maybe some of that text ends up showing up in your book. But again, you're getting this writing advice from me. If you're tuning into the channel, clearly you're finding some of it useful. For me, I think it's useful to think of character and plot as separate elements of fiction, and to think about, as I'm writing, bringing together the plot I have in mind with the cast of characters that I have created. So then character and plot go forward together, and the characters influence the plot influences the characters. For me, there is back and forth. There's no dominance of one element completely overcoming the other. We will talk more about other elements of fiction in future videos, but I wanted to move into the recommendation portion of the class for today, and I decided it would be super fun to call your attention to something that I really only discovered a year or so ago, although I'm just thrilled to know about it now, and I continue to kind of go back and pull at it in bits and pieces. I've mentioned I was going to do more homework on disabled writers, and that I would be talking to you and having more recommendations available for writers with disabilities. So I went back. I knew that a while ago, specifically starting in 2014, Lightspeed magazine, along with Fantasy and Nightmare, had done what are collectively known as the Destroy projects. I'm going to put all kinds of links up in the description of the video, but by all means, go look this up online. It began in 2014 with Lightspeed's big double anniversary issue, Women Destroy Science Fiction. And then on over the next few years, People of Color Destroy Science Fiction at Lightspeed. People of Color Destroy Horror at Nightmare. People of Color Destroy Fantasy at, I want to say that was at Fantasy Magazine. I will double check on where the People of Color Destroy Fantasy was located. And again, I'll have all the links in the video. And there's Lightspeed also did, I think in 2016, Queers Destroy Science Fiction. All of those issues, these are all magazine issues. Lightspeed's a magazine that publishes science fiction short stories, as are Nightmare and the others I've mentioned. I could not remember if there had been a Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction project or not, and I was glad I checked, because indeed in 2018, I believe, again, it'll be in the link, Uncanny Magazine did Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction, and really did a wonderful job putting that issue together. And a lot of that material, a lot of materials from those issues are available online. A lot of those issues are still available for purchase, either as ebooks or as print materials. But they are a fantastic project. I was just talking to somebody about them earlier this week when I said, oh, I'm getting ready to do the video and I'm going to talk about the Destroy projects. And I got kind of a blank look. And I said, you know, women destroy science fiction, queers destroy science fiction, people of color destroy science fiction. And I realized I don't want to spend a lot of time on the channel talking about this because, you know, I think it's a lot more important to talk about the projects that have affirmed the work of women, the work of writers from the LGBTQIA+ community, works that affirm writers of color. But a lot of these projects got going, their genesis, this idea that all of these people are destroying these genres, came from some grumbling that started to happen among white, male, cis writers in the genre who got unhappy about all of these people dragging in their own agendas and destroying science fiction. If you want to know more about that grumbling, you can look up the 2015 Hugo Awards and the Sad Puppies. And that is a rabbit hole deep and depressing enough. You will probably need to go into it with lots of ice cream. I needed lots of ice cream. So yeah, this idea, these destroy projects, came in response to this grumbling by privileged white writers, mostly of the male persuasion, that science fiction wasn't their exclusive province anymore. Sadly, Samuel Delany, black and gay, had said in an essay in the late 90s on racism in science fiction, he saw it all coming. He said, oh yeah, I get to be on all these panels right now, and oh yeah, we're celebrating here in the 90s our writers of color in science fiction when there's like 2 or 3 of us. Trust me, by the time there are more of us, it'll be a problem. And it didn't take very much longer before it became the problem that Delany could see coming. But I also hope, I also believe Delany had to have seen the affirmation coming, the destroy projects coming. And as is pointed out in the preface to the Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction in Uncanny, sure, we've got to talk about how all of us are pulling apart the pieces of the genre, the parts of the genre that have silenced, made invisible, left out various folks. We're also building. We're also, even as we destroy, we are synthesizing, we are recreating, we are making new all of those bits and pieces, and all of the new bits and pieces, and all of the silent or unseen but always there bits and pieces. And I sure believe that our reading life and our writing life can be richer for all of those contributions. So keep writing, keep up that energy, and check out the Destroy projects. Links in the channel description. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye.